Hello and welcome back to Backseat Driver. Today's episode, we attempt to answer the question, are cars getting uglier these days? I think our producer gave us this topic maybe because of not recently, but in the last 1-2 years, BMW has that huge grille that got even bigger, and recently the new Subaru WRX was unveiled, and a lot of people were saying that it's probably the ugliest WRX that has come about. Yeah. So what's your hot take?
Firstly, I think the first thing we have to acknowledge is that I think design is entirely subjective, right? I think there is no real objective measure saying something is good looking, something is bad looking. So I think that's something we need to immediately acknowledge. Second thing is, I personally think that this notion of whether it's ugly, whether it's pretty, is kind of a complicated question, because I don't think anything is inherently ugly, or like the word ugly, it doesn't really mean anything unless you contextualize it, right? So
I before you go on, I got a curveball for you. Do you know the Fiat Multipla?
cannot say that it immediately comes to mind.
Okay, but that's one ugly car. Okay, but carry on. Contextualize ugly.
Well, so I think we have to look at the context of, okay, let's talk about the BMW grille lah, right? So I think that's something that obviously has been quite a controversial topic when it first came out. I think when it first debuted on the M3 and M4, people were like, oh wow, it's very out there. It's a very drastic change from what we perhaps are used to seeing from a BMW, right?
Yes.
And I must admit, when I first saw it, I was like, wow, okay lah, that's quite a lot, right? That's
Okay,
a lot
yeah.
of grille. But now that grille has been with us for maybe a year, and we've seen it across like different cars, right? I personally don't think it's necessarily an ugly design choice. Is it a controversial design choice? Yes, it is. There's no getting around the fact that that's not typical and that is a very bold choice. But I think it can work on certain cars. So like the most recent one I drove was the new 4 Series Grand Coupe. So that's a bigger car, right? There's sort of more behind the grille. And I think in that context, it's not bad looking at all. I actually think it works quite well in that context. And also, depending on like the color of the car, I think some colors work better than others. Like if it's all black, or maybe it's a white car. So I think the contrast between the black grille and the rest of the car isn't so stark. So I think in that sense, it works a little bit better. So I think context is everything, right? I think when it comes to design, it's very easy to think of it as abstracting, but we also need to really take it in context.
Yeah, I think for me, the grille on the BMW, it's not universally condemned. I feel that there are people who like it. I'm okay with it.
You're not into practicality if you're a coupe buyer. You're buying it to flex.
And I mean, we see a few of them on the roads. It means the people who buy it obviously like the design. I have to applaud BMW for at least trying something new.
Yep.
If I were to compare BMW to Audi, I feel that the Audi design is really very slow in evolving.
I mean, it's basically the same design language. It's like they move the line a little bit, they sharpen the line a little bit.
It's very conservative, and I feel that you can't go wrong, but you also can't really excite someone.
So it's interesting that you said that, because I was actually talking to the 4 Series Coupe designer, and he was saying that the thing that I think maybe a lot of car owners, car buyers don't necessarily think about when it comes to design is the fact that when these designers sit down and draw out these new cars, right, they're not designing for, let's say the car is launched in 2020, they're not designing for 2020, right? These cars have a minimum life of 5 years before they go through any kind of facelift, and in all sort of honesty, these cars, they are planned out for, let's say, a 10-year life cycle, right? So this design needs to last for 10 years whatsoever, right? So they're designing for that future as well. And I think they also have in mind this sense that, this design needs to be sort of both contemporary and also sort of a little bit forward-looking. So,
because I think maybe the reason why this title for this Backseat Driver came about might be because, when we talk about beautiful cars, we always look back to the past.
Yes.
I mean, for me, the Lamborghini Murcielago is nice. The Miura, it's nice. And for me, it might be because those are cars that you can no longer have.
Yeah.
And they are, maybe it's also because of safety ratings. Now cars, their panels don't tend to be as nice and curvy as they were in the 60s and 70s. And can you, in the past 1 year or 18 months or 2 years, single out a car that was newly launched that you thought, this is a beauty, this is going to be a childhood bedroom as a poster? When for example, my childhood, the Countach was the poster car.
First, to answer your second question, I think there are some examples of it, but obviously they're rare. So things like maybe the Lexus LC,
Okay.
but these are cars that were designed sort of purposefully designed to be beautiful cars, right? It's very interesting that you talk about the fact that we sort of look back to maybe the 50s, 60s and say, oh, these cars are really beautiful. And I agree. I also like cars from the generation. Car design sort of isn't an abstract thing, right? It's very easy for us to think, oh, designer take a piece of paper, they draw one line, and then that line becomes a car. But that's obviously not true, right?
Yeah.
I mean, car design goes hand in hand with engineering, with all kinds of other things, with safety, etc., etc. So when we talk about cars from the 50s, the 60s, or even before that, I think we also have to acknowledge that came from a generation where there was coach building as a profession. That was quite a big thing, right? So you have companies that their job is to build the body of the car and to make the car beautiful. So I think that's one. The other thing is there weren't so many cars back then. You could make the argument that designers or brands have more time to spend on their cars, and they have individual monolines, right? The third thing we need to also consider is from a production standpoint. Back in the day when, let's say, you're making three models and of whatever number, if you hand build them or whatsoever, you can make all these cars look different, right? Modern day, let's say Mercedes has 30 cars in their model lineup. I think it's also quite unreasonable to expect that every car looks different, because if every car looks different and every car has different panels, that means they need basically 30 factories to build their 30 cars. Right. So I think we also have to acknowledge that there is a certain level of challenge when it comes to differentiating cars, because the more you can make, I mean,
it's a compromise,
right?
and you brought up a good point about Mercedes having 30 different cars. And one thing I noticed is that now the C-Class, the E-Class and the S-Class, they kind of look the same, except it's getting bigger and bigger. I wish that in the past there was a bit more differentiation, like not just in size but in form factor.
I agree that I think this sense of differentiation is ideal in a perfect world, but I mean, ultimately cars are still a business. And I think the other thing that I also think is interesting is, I think design, we also have to realize that design is very much a function of its time. So when we talk about cars in the 50s, 60s, I think there was this
romantic notion,
perhaps maybe slightly romanticized feeling of, cars are a beautiful thing. Right. So as a brand, as a designer, I want it to be the most perfect, beautiful form that it can be. And that's why maybe we have like very curvaceous lines. You see your old Ferraris, your old Fords, whatsoever, right? And then I think we get to a generation in, let's say, maybe the 80s, 90s, where it's really just about mass production. You want to push out as many cars as possible. And obviously, again, there's a certain level of compromise where you cannot hand build every car, right? You want to factory build cars, and I'm no engineer, but I would imagine it's easier to make straight lines than to make curves, right? So I think we then see a generation of boxy cars, and that was the sort of the design language of that generation, of that time. So all cars tend to look like that. Then we come to the 90s where we have, I guess, more rounded shapes. Will you agree? Right. So we do see trends over time. So in the 90s we have slightly more rounded shapes.
Bulbous.
A bit bulbous shapes. And then we get to the 2000s, mid 2000s, where to me it's basically the sort of buzzword was sporty. Right? Everyone wants to be sporty, so everything is about sharp lines. And I think on one hand that's the design part of it. I think the the other thing we need to acknowledge, I think it reached a point where I think there was a greater understanding of the function of aerodynamics to a car, right? I mean, we look back at our old, let's say you look back at your old E30s, your E36s, your old Mercs, all these boxy cars. Yeah, maybe they were beautiful, but we have to also acknowledge that these aren't sort of aerodynamically efficient cars, right?
Yeah.
And I think as car technology evolves, they also understand this more, and they understand that, hey, you know, aero matters. And I think this balancing of function and form, I mean, that's always a constant challenge for car brands. We're still in this midst of design transformation as well, because I think with the move towards electric cars, we start to see different, different functional elements, right? You know, with electric cars, you definitely want maximum aero. You have different requirements when it comes to like cooling, so you don't need a front grille.
Yes,
so
yes.
I
I would say that if you are making an EV, but you're making it based on an existing ICE vehicle platform, then you cover up the front grille. That's when the car, to me, looks a little weird already. I would rather they built it up from scratch.
Yeah, but again, that's still, it comes back to the economics point of view, right? Which is that not every car maker is capable of saying, oh, I'm going to co-develop a new ICE car and a new EV completely on two different production lines, stuff like that.
The new EVs that are based on petrol vehicles are ugly to me. Yeah, and I wish that if they wanted to do a design without a front grille, they should start on a completely new platform, or this is going to be controversial, but if they want to do an EV on an existing petrol platform, they should have a fake grille. Let's move on to the Rex. Do you have any opinion on it?
Honestly, personally, I don't have a big opinion on it because I've never been a Rex person. But my sort of only take on it is, I would always tell people, give it time lah. You know, I think it's easy to get caught up. Again, I think it's the recency bias, right? It's easy to get caught up in a moment and thinking, this new thing, you know, you spend however long, maybe fantasizing or fetishizing about the old one, and then a new one comes along. The new thing is very rarely immediately like, wow, hey, this is so much better. I think every car goes through that, right?
I personally think that the new Rex looks okay. I guess, like what you said, a lot of people are holding on to what the Rex used to look, and I don't even think it was the previous generation. It's the Rally Championship.
Yeah, so like
the bug eye.
Yeah, those bug eye ones. Let's be real. Those cars cannot exist on our roads anymore, right? You talk about safety regulations, the fact that you need to fit airbags, you need to fit sensors, you need to fit new equipment. The fundamental size of cars have changed. The fundamental shape of cars have changed.
Yeah,
so,
I will even go so far as to say, and this is controversial, but if that era's Rex was designed today and put on the roads today, people would think that it's ugly.
Yeah, it's entirely possible, right?
Yeah, because its shape is totally not in line with the prevailing trends of today.
Of course. So I think that's the thing, right? Design is a very contextual thing. So you have to look at it in the context of what's around it, what else is around it, and what the market is like. I mean, when it comes to design, I do think that there are a couple of brands that you can look at that say, okay, I think they have taken a very big step forward as far as design is concerned. I think the first brand that comes to mind is Volvo. Okay. So I think it's not often that you see a brand like so clearly tell the world and say, hey, we are pivoting, we are moving in this direction, this is our new design language. And I think Volvo was one of the brands that really pushed that message, right? Which is that, hey, okay, they know that they're known for making slightly sort of dull-looking, boxy cars. I think there was a very clear shift since, I think, the XC90, that you can tell that, hey, these new cars are purposefully designed to look different and to look futuristic. I think that's also in line with their brand adjustment now that they're aiming to go fully EV, that kind of thing. So it's also partially a brand decision thing, right? I mean, if the direction of your brand changes, then of course design will change along with it.
Yeah. So there you have it, our hot take on whether cars are getting uglier today. Do you disagree or agree? Or are there any cars out there that you think is absolutely beautiful that was launched in the past, let's say 2 years? Let us know in the comments section below. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell notification icon so that you will be notified whenever we upload something new. Till then, I'm John and this is Desmond. We'll see you next time. Bye bye.